This is the book of Psalm, chapter 58, verse 3. The wicked are estranged from the womb. They go astray as soon as they be born, speaking lies. Brakata Yahweh, Brakata Yahweh Shai, Brakata Yahweh, Brakata Yahweh Shai. Yahweh is the name who the world ignorantly calls God, and Yahweh Shai is his son who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. First and foremost, I want to give all praises and all glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Brakah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who grew well and taught us this truth. They are the true teachers for the nation of Israel on earth today. And salutation to the Akim out there pushing this truth and sincerity throughout the four corners of the earth and risking their life for Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai's sake. I'm Brother Samak from the GMS Miami camp. And yes, the reason why I brought out the book of Psalm, chapter 58, verse 3, is that the Trump administration has been caught lying again, all right, regarding how many U.S. troop casualties have occurred during this Iran war, okay? And this reminded me of Psalm chapter 58, verse 3, because this confirms who the wicked is, all right? The wicked are these Edomites, these so-called white people. Okay? In fact, when you go to the book of Malachi, which I have, all right, the Lord calls them, okay, the border of wickedness, all right? These Edomites, these so-called white people, okay? So when we say, all right, the wicked pertaining to Esau, Edom, all right, it's facts, all right? And when we say the wicked are the so-called white people today, it's facts because, again, all right, who else is doing nothing but wicked deeds all throughout the earth? It's these so-called white people, Esau, Edom. So this is the book of Malachi, chapter 1, verse 1, the burden of the word of the Lord Yahweh to Israel by Malachi, right? And you notice how the book of Malachi, all right, from the beginning, it's being addressed to the Israelites because the Bible is written by Israelites for Israelites. All right, and that's a shot to you plantation Christians. Talking about this book is for anyone who believes in baby Jesus. That's a lie. This book is written by Israelites for Israelites. Okay? 2, I have loved you, saith the Lord, yet ye say, wherein hast thou loved us? Was not Esau Jacob's brother, saith the Lord Yahweh? Yeah, I love Jacob. Right, because the Lord loves, okay, Jacob, the progenitor of the 12 tribes of Israel, which are the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans of today. Okay, the Lord loves us. Okay, right now, all right, the bulk of our people can't see it because, all right, they're catching all this hell, all right, and but at the end of the day, that's your fault because you're not repenting and you're not seeking the Lord. So the Lord's going to put more punishment on you, all right, because you're supposed to be serving the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, all right, not serving idols and different gods, especially not believing in America, okay? Because America is on its way out. But you got a lot of Jakes that believe in America, and that's why they can't phantom and think that that the Lord is against this place and the Lord is against the biblical Edomites, the so-called white man today. 3, and I hated Esau and laid his mountains and his dragons in waste for, excuse me, let me read that one more time. And I hated Esau and laid his mountains, meaning governments, and his heritage waste for the dragons of the wilderness. Right, this is talking about when Rome fell, okay, after Domitian. That was it, because Nerva, okay, came into power right after that, and that's when these Edomites had that deadly wound, okay, because from Nerva all the way up to was it the Pope Innocent, right? Who was the Pope before Rodrigo Borgia? Yeah, Innocent. Pope Innocent the 8th. Yeah, it was. And this is how you know, man, these were the Edomites again, with their wicked deeds. All right, there's a record of 200 assassinations, okay, after the Pope Innocent died. there was a whole bunch of Jakes being assassinated, and that's how these Edomites took over the papacy, and Rodrigo Borgia became the Pope. All right, this is when the Renaissance came in, and it says it right here in verse 4. Whereas Edom saith, we are impoverished, but we will return and build the desolate places. Right. The Renaissance period, okay, it started with Spain. And how interesting that Spain wins the FIFA World Cup, because that's Esau using witchcraft, trying to get his former glory back, which that's gonna fail. Okay, it's all failing, and that is failing. You know, I'm not even gonna say gonna fail. It's failing now. You're losing this war, and you're lying about how many soldiers are dying, and you're lying how many Iranians you're killing, which I'm gonna bring that out next. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, they shall build, but I will throw down. Right. Okay, and the Lord is throwing down. And they shall call them, here's the point, the border wickedness, and the people against whom the Lord have indignation forever. Right. And when you go to this word wickedness, all right, this describes the Edomites, so-called white people today, the wicked. That's why I brought out Psalm chapter 58, verse 3. The wicked are, okay, are estranged from the womb. Let me bring that one more time. Psalm chapter 58, verse 3. The wicked are estranged from the womb. They go astray as soon as they be born, speaking lies. That's the so-called white man, Esau Edom. Okay? And he lies about everything. Okay? If it puts a stain on him, he's gonna lie about it. Okay? And gaslight the people. Create another's distraction, point a finger at somebody else. That's the so-called white man, Esau Edom. So the Hebrew word for wickedness is Rasha'ai, and it means wickedness, guilt, wickedness in civil relations. Yep, wickedness of enemies, wickedness ethical and religious. Right, that's the so-called white man, Esau Edom. And again, back to the history with the Pope, Rodrigo. How did he get into that power? All right, he had to kill a whole bunch of people, over 200 assassinations, man. Okay, Pope Rodrigo. Okay, he was the beginning of what you call the Renaissance period. Okay, wrong, fought wickedly. That's it. All right. So yeah, this just confirms who the wicked is. So back to this article. So clearly Esau Edom, he's a wicked liar. He lies about everything. He lies about how he about war. Okay, because even with the Iranians, all right. Let me show you something. I asked how many Iranians have been killed in the war according to America. According to the U.S. and the JJ government estimates, and the JJs, who is literally dragging America into this war and keeping America involved in this war. Okay, that's why the whole Epstein regime, okay, has to keep coming out. All right, because it's making sure that these politicians, all right, stay the course with this war. Over 6,000 Iranians have been killed in the conflict. Those casualties occurred during joint Babylon the Great and the JJ airstrikes targeting Iranian military, government, and infrastructure sites. In comparison, the Iranian government reports a lower toll of approximately 3,500 Iranian deaths. You see? So somebody's clearly lying. Meanwhile, the U.S. military has confirmed the deaths of 17 American service members during the war. And this is a lie. All right? This is why Donald Trump is crashing out. Because the New York Times reported that they've been lying about the casualties, about the deaths and the wounded. Now, now let's go to the Vietnam War, because I asked, did America manipulate enemy body counts in Vietnam? Yes, the U.S. military heavily manipulated enemy body counts during the Vietnam War, turning casualty reports into a deeply flawed and often fabricated metric of military progress. Right, same thing you're seeing today. You know, Donald Trump said that they decimated Iran's military capabilities, which decimate means 1 out of 10. Okay, deci meaning 10. Okay, the other part, decimate, meaning destroy. In fact, 1 out of 10. In fact, I got it right here. Decimate. to select by lot and put to death every 10th man. From Latin decimatus. Pass, participle decimate, the removal or destruction of 1/10. There you go. The killing of 1 in 10 chosen by lots from rebellious city or mutinous army was a punishment sometimes used by the Romans. There you go. Okay, so there it goes, meaning 1 out of 10. So to select by lot and put to death every 10th man, right? So whenever time you hear the media saying they decimated Iran, what they're saying, if you have understanding of words, they only put like 1 out of 10 men were put to death. Okay, so clearly they haven't defeated Iran. So again, lying, pattern recognition. They've been lying, and there's nothing new under the sun. Okay, back in Vietnam, pattern recognition. Okay, it says, so we're going to continue reading this. Because the unconventional nature of the Vietnam War lacked clear front lines or territory to conquer, sounds familiar with Iran, right? Command turned into a strategy of attrition, measuring success almost entirely by how many enemy troops were killed. And you watch that in Full Metal Jacket, okay? Private Joker and Rafterman were told by their commanding officer, all right, to lie about how many gooks, as they, that was the derogatory term for them, Vietnamese, which I believe they go back to Moab, okay? The Moabites, all right? They were saying, say that an officer was killed from the gooks, say a whole bunch of soldiers got killed. Basically lie, all right? Cook the books, for lack of better words. This created a perverse system that incentivizes distortion at all level of command, right? So again, this is why the scriptures say, what is it? In Ecclesiastes, chapter 1, verse 15, that which is crooked cannot be made straight, and that which is wanting cannot be numbered. When you go into the word crooked, the Hebrew word is iwath. This is a I, this is a wa. All right, this is a tha. All right, iwath, which means to be bent, be crooked, bend, make crooked, pervert, to make crooked, falsify. And that's the so-called white man's MO. He falsifies everything. All right, history. Okay, war, everything. Pervert, subvert. That's the so-called white man. That's what he's been doing. Okay, Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, the border of wickedness. Direct inflation, pressure to report high enemy casualties often led field officers to simply make up or drastically inflate numbers. Clearly what you're seeing today. Civilian casualties, unarmed civilians, including women and children, were frequently recorded as enemy combatants to boost operational success. Right, that's why there's a scene in Full Metal Jacket, okay, where you have this, wild Edomite, the wild man, the beast man, all right, shooting at gooks out of a helicopter, out of a chopper, and he's saying, get some, get some, get some, okay? And again, Private Joker with Rafterman, they were like, how many have you killed? He's like, I don't know, like, I forgot how the scene went, but basically he didn't have a number. But there you go. They were killing women and children and using them as enemy combatants. Same thing in Iran. That's exactly what they're doing. They're killing women and children. All right, guaranteed they're going to use those little girls that they killed in that school as enemy combatants. Equipment and weapons. In some instances, units would claim large numbers of enemy dead based on secondary explosions or artillery strikes without confirming actual bodies on the ground. Right. So the same thing that's going on with this war. Talk about they destroyed Iran's missile capabilities and naval capabilities. Meanwhile, Iran's able to, use their smaller boats to go up and down the Strait of Hormuz. They're still able to use their ballistic missiles and their Shahed, which is their suicide drone, and tag up all military bases throughout the Middle East. So it goes to show you, again, he's a liar. Now, let's go to the scriptures. Okay, has this man been lying when he knew he was an Edomite? Okay, yes. So now we're going to go to the account of when uh, King David learns of Saul's death. All right, and it's an Amalekite who makes up some bizarre makes up a story, and we're going to see it right here. 2 Samuel chapter 1 verse 1. Pattern recognition. All right, these are the Edomites. All right, these so-called white people. All right, whether they want to call themselves JJs, 1940 small hats, or Americans or Europeans, they are liars. They've always been liars. They lie about history. They lie about war. They'll lie about science. They'll lie about everything. Okay, to make themselves look good and everybody else, okay, look terrible. 2 Samuel chapter 1 verse 1. Now it came to pass after the death of Saul, when David was returned from the slaughter of the Amalekites, right? Because King David, all right, hated Esau, Edom. He hated the Amalekites, so he was always putting them to death. And David had abode 2 days in Ziklag. 2. It came even to pass on the 3rd day that, behold, a man came out of the camp from Saul with his clothes rent and earth upon his head. And so it was when he came to David that he fell to the earth and did abstinence. Right, abstinence meaning deep respect. All right, which this was all lies. Okay, you're going to see why, because who was this man? 3. And David said unto him, from whence comest thou? And he said unto him, out of the camp of Israel, and I escaped. And David said unto him, how went this matter? I pray thee, tell me. And he answered, that the people are fled from the battle, and many of the people also are fallen and dead, and Saul and Jonathan his son are dead also. 5. And David said unto the young man that told him, how knowest thou that Saul and Jonathan his son be dead? And the young man that told him said, as I happened by chance upon Mount Gilboa, behold, Saul leaned upon his spear, and lo, the chariots and horsemen followed hard after him. And when he looked behind him, he saw me and called unto me, and I answered, here I am. This is a straight up lie, because that's not how King Saul died. Okay? 8. And he said unto me, who art thou? And I answered him, I am an Amalekite. Bing, 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 bing. So-called white man speaking lies. All right? And these are the JJs. Okay? That's why the Lord said he would have war with Amalek from generation to generation. Let me get that. Got to bring that out. Because the Lord does not like these JJs, these 1948ers, these small hats. Amalekite. Okay? That's why he's making sure that this war in the Middle East, all right, results in their destruction. And it's coming. All right? Yeah, here it is. Exodus chapter 17, verse 16. For he said, because the Lord Yahweh has sworn that the Lord Yahweh will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. You see that? So the Lord's against these Amalekites from generation to generation. All right? So back to the account. 9. He said unto me again, stand, I pray thee, meaning I beg thee, upon me and slay me, for anguish is come upon me, because my life is yet whole in me. So I stood upon him and slew him, because I was sure that he could not live after that he was fallen. And I took the crown that was upon his head, and the bracelet that was on his arm, and have brought them hither unto my Lord. Then David took hold on his clothes and rent them, and likewise all the men that were with him. And they mourned and wept and fasted until even for Saul, and for Jonathan his son, and for the people of the Lord Yahweh, and for the house of Israel, because they were fallen by the sword. Right, because at the end of the day, these are still Israelites. All right? Just like, today, we get on IUIC, ISUPK, but we want them to change. We want them to repent. We don't want them, all right, to be destroyed. All right? Okay? Because at the end of the day, they're Israelites. But we have to have a balance, too. When they're off, we got to point out that they're off. And we're going to tell them that you keep doing what you're doing, the Lord's going to kill your ass. Okay? Nothing new under the sun. This is what we've been doing, all right, amongst our people. Always rebuking. Open rebuke is better than secret love. Okay? 13. And David said unto the young man that told him, whence thou art? And he answered, I am the son of a stranger and Amalekite. Ooh, a son of a stranger and Amalekite. I want to see this word stranger. Is it... see this word stranger. A temporary inhabitant, a newcomer lacking inherent rights. Right. So Somebody who's temporarily inhabiting the land, okay, is a stranger. Because again, this Amalekite is a heathen. All right, so he was temporarily living in the land in our homeland, okay, on our territory, okay. 14. And David said unto him, how wast thou not afraid to stretch forth thy hand to destroy the Lord's anointed? 15. And David called one of the young men and said, go near and fall upon him and smote him, that he die. 16. And David said unto him, thy blood be upon thy head, for thy mouth hath testified against thee, saying, I have slain the Lord's anointed. Right, and again, was this true? All right, this is something that he's telling David. All right, now let's go to the account. Because again, these Edomites lied, okay? Or in this account, this Amalekite lies. And the Amalekites are just a tribe from Esau, Edom. 1 Samuel 31 and 1. Now the Philistines fought against Israel, and the men of Israel fled from before the Philistines and fell down, slain in Mount Gilboa. 2. And the Philistines followed hard upon Saul and upon his sons. Right, King Saul. This is when Saul was still king. And the Philistines slew Jonathan and Abinadab and Malchishua, Saul's son. 3. And the battle went sore against Saul, and the archers hit him, and he was sore wounded of the archers. 4. Here's the point. Then said Saul unto his armbearer, draw thy sword and thrust me through therewith, lest these uncircumcised come and thrust me through and abuse me. But his armbearer would not, for he was sore afraid. Therefore Saul took a sword and fell upon it. So that's how Saul died. So this Amalekite was lying. Okay, he was lying. And that's these Edomites. They lie about everything. Okay, so they look good, or they could get something out of lying. Like he wanted, basically, why did this Amalekite lie? Because he wanted a reward from King David. Okay, that's why. All right, and I believe this is before David was crowned king, because he was coming back, because this is still the time where King Saul was still king. All right, but eventually he became King David. That's why I said King David, just for historical context. But at the end of the day, these Amalekites lie. All right, they lie. All right, because they want to look good, or they want something. All right, so here it is. Saul died, killed himself by the sword. 5. And when his armbearer saw that Saul was dead, he fell likewise upon the sword and died with him. 6. So Saul died, and his 3 sons, and his armbearer, and all his men that same day together. There you go. So this is a great account to show you that, okay, or a pattern recognition that these Amalekites, these so-called white people, whether they want to call themselves JJs, or they want to call themselves Americans or Europeans, they're habitual liars. They lie going all the way back to antiquity. Nothing new under the sun. All right? So you expect more lies, all right, coming out of that tube of mainstream media. All right? Expect more lies from these so-called white people. Expect more lies from this, all right, these two degenerates, because they're going to lie and be a snake, all right, all the way up to, all right, their judgment. Because at the end of the day, America's going down. Thus saith the Lord. So, Lord willing, as us edifying, I want to give all praises and all glory to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. Double honors to the apostle elders of Great Millstone who ruled well and taught us this truth. They are the true teachers for the nation of Israel on earth today. And citation to the Akim out there pushing this truth and sincerity throughout the four corners of the earth and risking their life for Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai's sake. Love you, brothers. Keep the door, keep the faith, keep pushing, keep fighting, keep studying. Pray without ceasing. Pray for each other. Pray for the apostle elders. We're almost out of here. To the few sisters that are watching, keep studying. When you pray, pray, cover. Shalom. And as the apostle elders always say, on to the next one. Shalom.